Hi everyone, my name is PK, and here we have JD and Mika from Cairns Property Office Rentals. JD is a BDM from the agency. Mika has got multiple decades of rental management experience. And in this episode, I thought what we'd do is a deep dive on Cairns. Cairns has been pretty flat, kind of before the COVID time for almost a decade, and a lot of investors ruled it out. I myself have a property in Cairns, which in hindsight wasn't the best deal at the time. Now it's kind of come good. And so that was one of my mistakes. I'll put my hands up. But yeah, in the last couple of years or 3 years, it's done incredibly well, grown more than 50%, as has the rent. But this episode's not about me. This episode's about those of you who are watching or listening, considering buying in Cairns because it still offers healthy yields. You can still get 5% plus gross rental yields. It still affords that affordability story. You don't need 7, 8, 900K, $1 million to buy into the Cairns property market. And one thing that I find particularly salivating, and I'm not pumping it up, there's always goods and bads, the pros and cons with any location. What I found really interesting and enticing is that pre-COVID, it had basically done nothing for the previous decade. So it has a lot of catching up to do. A lot of people feel that you should only invest in locations which have had strong past performance, but actually the data suggests otherwise. Those locations that have a lot of catching up to do tend to do well in the next 5 to 10 year period. But it's already doing pretty well in the last 2 years. So in this episode, I'm going to pick the brains of JD and Mika to understand their thoughts on the rental market. No point buying an amazing property or suburb that's going to grow if it's going to stay empty or the tenants are going to be, causing a headache or stress. So we're going to talk about the rental market and then also the property market proper insofar as where they see the best opportunity. Maybe we'll go into specific suburbs, the infrastructure outlook, the economic outlook of Cairns, really giving you a holistic bird's eye view on what Cairns is all about. So you guys can all make a personal decision per your risk appetite, whether this is the next spot that you want to put your next deposit into. Or without further ado, thank you so much, guys, for making time.
No worries. Thank you for having us, PK.
Welcome to the Oz Property Investment Mastery Podcast. My name's PK and I help busy people build passive income by buying top 5% growth and cash flow property and build a portfolio using data without wasting months doing research, spending weekends at inspection or catching flights, or dropping $10,000 to $20,000 on buyer's agents every single time. So if you're confused, lack confidence, and just overwhelmed with all the information and marketing misinformation available online and don't know where to start, then this show is for you. So let's just talk about the history of Cairns before we get into the present and in the future. I just said I wouldn't, but maybe Mika, this is relevant for you because you do have 2 decades of experience right there. Um, Cairns is kind of being like this sleeping dog kind of thing for the last decade, maybe even since the GFC. It has this notorious reputation of being a tourist town that's largely fluctuating in its fortunes based on how many tourists come, based on how many, how strong the Australian dollar is, etc. Um, what do you see, like, how was Cairns for property investors in the past, and do you see any structural shift in the Cairns economy right now?
It's definitely catching up, as you said, and I think that's essentially what it has done with with COVID. What happened is we were largely unaffected. We didn't have as many lockdowns, and the restrictions weren't as solid as what they were in other states. So I believe lots of people sort of run away to Cairns, and looking for the lifestyle. We've got the pools in our backyards, and we've got the lovely palm trees, and you don't have to leave. Even if you were in a lockdown period, you could enjoy your lifestyle still sitting on your back porch or in your pool. there was no real change to us up here in regards to that. So we've seen a lot of people moving from south up to Cairns, which then obviously people have stayed in Cairns, and the words got around that it's a great place to live. So I think that COVID helped with that, but I think we are just catching up with the rest of the market, really.
Right. Yeah, I know that like right now, healthcare comprises, if I'm not wrong, around 15% of the employment source in Cairns, and that's the highest of any industry. And healthcare is, tends to be high paying or at least stable jobs. Then it's accommodation, then retail, and then, tourism, etc. In terms of your rent book or like, your properties under management, what kind of people do you find are renting in Cairns? It might be a pretty obvious question, but for people down in Sydney, Melbourne, they might be scratching there. Maybe they've never been to Cairns and they're like, who lives up there? Like, who are these people that are renting? What do they do for a living?
There's lots. I mean, we do have everybody. So there are people that do come internationally and move to Cairns, and they do their period of work for the visa in the rural community. So we might have some of those transient types. We also do have a lot of families. We have a lot of professionals. So we do have, it's cliche, but we have a little bit of everyone up here.
Yeah,
Just to add on that, Pika, I think you know there's a lot of professionals moving to Cairns as well, just because you could still live a really nice, relaxed lifestyle at pretty much a much lower cost than you would in Sydney or Brisbane. So we do find that we get a lot of doctors or healthcare professionals, like you mentioned, that move to Cairns, and it's a much more laid back, relaxed lifestyle.
yeah, right. I know that unemployment, I think, is less than 3% now. It was like 6% plus just a few years ago, and it's getting better and better. Of course, most of Australia, especially Sydney and the big cities, I experiencing a cost of living crisis with, inflation going up and everything basically going up. What's the kind of vibe in Cairns? Like, is it somewhat insulated from that because salaries are higher, or are you guys, or not you guys per se, but are people there also feeling it? What's the word on the street?
Well, I think there's something for everyone, right? We found that we just recently got a basic 3 bedroom, 1 bathroom unit. Um, pretty much sitting between the 500, 550 mark for a rental, and had it on for 2, 3 days with about 20 applicants. So there's a big portion of the market that kind of want to go in that more affordable kind of properties. A family that doesn't want to go over the $600 mark. Um, but then you can also find something really nice in the beaches, where you pay a bit more.
Right, right. Um, I know that maybe 5 years ago there was, maybe even 6 or 7 years ago, there was a big pipeline of building approvals and a lot of like building activity that happened, especially like far south. I don't know if that's a nomenclature you guys use, but in the southern corridor, I think that's a lot of that has been built and a lot of that is drying up, if I'm not mistaken. But what are you guys seeing? Maybe cranes is the wrong question because that would be more in the city. But are you seeing a lot of new detached houses being built around Cairns, or is that no longer the case?
Yeah, there's definitely lots of new homes being built because the supply and demand in itself, that's what another reason why it did drive the prices of rent up, because we had an influx of people moving to Cairns. We also then had an influx of people buying houses that had tenants in place, and of course there was no new builds being built at that time. So the tenants that were being vacated from the properties had nowhere to go, basically. So, um, yeah, so then obviously we've got Cutters Rise down in Gordon Vale that does the quarter acre blocks, and there's a big a big expanding suburb down there. It's close to the city, relevantly close. Like us Cairns people would say it's far, far away, but in actual facts, it's like 30 minutes away. So for someone coming up from down south that's used to traveling an hour to get to work, it's actually quite close. It's a beautiful suburb down there, but there's lots of growth in respect to new builds because the demand is there. There's not enough houses for the amount of people. And then, obviously the council understand they've got to release, the land, they've got to allow the developments to occur. So that's good. And that's what we're seeing is there's lots of new builds happening. They did Trinity Park and things like that a few years ago, and that sort of expanded. Lots of new builds out there, and now we're seeing it down south. So we are growing.
Right. I mean, that's good because I think there was a 12-month period in which, at least in that southern corridor, like Edmonton, Bentley Park, Mount Sheridan, etc., there was like 20% growth in the rental market in terms of rents went up like 20%, if not more, in just 12 months, 18 months. And there was just like nowhere for tenants to go. So it's great that they're getting more options. Are you finding that tenants are fine with living in Gordonvale, or would they much prefer be in, I suppose, more established suburbs like Mount Sheridan, Bentley Park, or, White Rock, etc.? Like, is that all right, then we'll go down because we have to, or are they fine with it? It's like not so much of a bigger drive.
No, it's lovely down there. They've built the new shopping center and things. So it's like a little city in itself. So people are wanting to actually move there, do you think?
Yeah,
Mm.
I think pretty much Gordonvale, I would say, is going to show a lot of growth over the next few years. Other than getting the Woolies up there and the big shopping center, Gupta's Rise is a new development, which actually is being done by one of our directors. And they released a whole bunch of blocks. We've been getting, we on some of the properties, we're getting 750 per week, which is amazing for Gordonvale. You know, they're doing a big health facility there where it's going to be doctors, physiotherapists, and all those. They're also planning on doing a age facility there as well. So all of those would significantly increase the prices around Gordonvale. So I think that's kind of where the growth is sitting because there's just not really any land available. So, you know, I guess on the other side as well, because of the influx of people, driving from Trinity Beach is pretty much taking the same time as coming from Gordonvale into the city. So, whether you're doing 30-minute drive or 30 minutes in traffic, takes the same time.
Right, right. Yeah, I always think like Cairns has a natural constraint in terms of building because obviously you've got the ocean on the right, the mountains, etc., on the left. The southern areas where you can build out. But I was wondering, like, what do the locals feel about driving 30 minutes or maybe an hour? It sounds like it's not such a big deal. I mean, the drive is probably pretty beautiful. I think I visited my Mount Sheridan property once, and I landed in Cairns. I was like, I don't mean to be disrespectful to any Cairns people out there, but Cairns proper, this was like ages ago. It's like 2016 or something. I was like, oh, this is not that. Yeah, I don't know if I want to be in Cairns, like set CBD. And then I drove out to I mean, I wasn't going to knock on the door. I just like wanted to see the house that I had bought. And I was like, oh, I can see myself living in Mount Sheridan. It's like super nice. Like you said, palm trees and greenery, and it's next to some like hills or some rolling hills. It was really, really beautiful. And I was like, okay, maybe Cairns folks think this is like super far out to travel to the CBD, but apparently not. Um, one question I had was sometimes with these new developments, the developers can often misjudge the demand and they build too many houses or too many lots, and then, of course, they sell them in tranches or in bunches, but sometimes they then struggle because the demand dries up and therefore prices stagnate. So when it comes to Gordonvale or any other place that is similar, Do you guys feel that there's significant demand to continue absorbing this land release and construction activity for years to come?
I believe so, yeah. The demand is high, and I don't think, like I said, we're just catching up to the rest of the world basically, and people are realizing it's a great place to be. It is a really nice place to live, and it is close. We're quite compact, and I know I complain about 30-minute drive, but that's not really that far. And the infrastructure and the new roads and the highways and all of those aspects are being improved. So it used to take 40 minutes and now it takes up 25 to 30 minutes to get to Gordon Vale. And there's more accessibility down there. You've got Woolies and it's just going to continue to grow basically.
Right. And can you just keep building? Like, is the council or the city going to continue releasing land even south of Gordonville? I don't know how to pronounce this, but like Goldsboro or Little Mulgrave and like towards Alumba, like, is there a lot of land that is that agricultural land or could they release it for low density residential?
So there was actually an article just a few weeks ago in the Cairns Post where they were mentioning about the lack of the infrastructure because Cairns didn't necessarily plan to have such big growth, a few years ago. So that's probably the first thing that would need to be upgraded is the infrastructure to accommodate all that new buildings, all the new builds. So I think it wouldn't be a thing that happens overnight, but I guess at the end of the day that's the only pretty much the only way cans can expand is moving out that way. So, it's gonna happen nonetheless.
And they wouldn't be looking at infrastructure if they didn't believe that it was going to continue to grow as well. So they obviously do their homework and know that that's where we're headed.
Right. So I know like in the Gold Coast and in the Sunshine Coast during COVID, and it hasn't really stopped this phenomenon of people from Melbourne and Sydney, predominantly retirees. They come and, they sell their Sydney or Melbourne home and, they've had it for like 20, 30 years. It's gone to the moon and they sell it for like 3 or 4 or 5 million dollars. And they buy this amazing place in the Gold Coast for just $2 million or the Sunshine Coast. Is that the typical profile of folks that you're seeing coming into Cairns from down south, or is it young couples and others?
Definitely not retirees, is it? Yeah, it's probably more.
Yeah, I guess for us, in our industry, because we predominantly work with, investors as such, we don't necessarily find but it's kind of across the board. I would say, if anything, we probably mostly have young families,
Mm.
on our rental books. But I guess the stigma, how it used to be is that retirees would come here and your normal holiday, your backpackers, that would come here. But it's not. I wouldn't say that demographic wise, Cairns is mostly retirees. There's definitely uh, a big percentage, and it would just make sense because it's such a lovely place to stay. It's laid back. You got the Barrier Reef just on the outskirts, so it does make sense. And I guess um, value for money is much better spending Cairns.
Yeah, right. Um, and there is one question I always get from folks that, this is all good. PKs can sounds like a good opportunity, and I personally don't mind if people buy there or not. Maybe you do, but I don't really have skin in the game. What do you think about the cyclone risk? Is it, Kansas had cyclones before. People from down south kind of brand places like Townsville, Cairns, even Brisbane these days, right? As being uninvestable because of this risk of natural weather disasters. How do locals feel about that? Do you guys, I mean, are houses built differently? Do you guys are you like losing sleep over that during storm season or cyclone season? Or what advice would you have for folks maybe in Melbourne, Sydney, wanting to invest, but like, oh, I rather just not take the risk.
Cairns is built for that risk as well. So we know there's cyclones, and we pretty much, unless it's a category 5, we don't really do much. You know, we prepare as best we can. You obviously get lots of warning. We encourage our investors and our property owners to, regular maintenance and preventative maintenance on properties, and that's something that all our staff are well trained in and well versed in. And it's more the properties are definitely built for that. It's not so much like, I don't think we've had a couple of cyclones in the last few years, and we have had a fence fall over, and we've had in a storm, we had a tree that fell down. So we don't have a lot of damage to properties unless, for example, Yasi and Larry, they were quite extreme, and really did some damage down south towards the Tully region. But we don't see a lot of the impact of the cyclone itself. So I just think they've just built differently, and the risk isn't really as bad as people think. And as I said, us locals, we sort of don't really do much unless it's a category 5. It's just part of our everyday life almost.
Yeah. When the recent cyclone came through Southeast Queensland, you're probably thinking, "Oh, it's, we get these, like, every year." It's like, not that it's no big deal. I mean, Brisbane's a different place. It's not built in the same way, but it's like, we get we get these, like, bigger I certainly thought I have property in Cairns and Townsville, other places, and I was like, "Okay, we're gonna get through this just fine. People are overreacting." But hey, I'm glad it wasn't as bad as they said it would be.
But it is the fact that, Brisbane isn't built for cyclones, so I was concerned for Brisbane, but, even though it was only a small category cyclone, but it's just up here where we're well versed, we've got the infrastructure for the flooding, we we've all got the cyclone screws in our roofs and things like that, like we prepare for it, and that's why we don't get as much damage as, for example, somewhere else that isn't prepared for it.
Yeah, right. Okay, good to know. And, the rental market, coming back to that point, it was very strong, especially, at least I can talk about my property when we're looking for new tenants or increasing the rent per market. Like it was very strong around, especially 2023, 2024. I think the last 6 months, it's just the rate or the tightness of the market has just softened out a little bit. That's just my own experience. I mean, I was still able to get a higher rent, but not at the same trajectory as I was over previous years. I mean, there's obviously like different suburbs and different pockets and markets within markets. But what are your thoughts on the rental market? Like, are you seeing vacancy rates start to edge up, albeit from a very low base? Or are you seeing more of the same, rents continue to rise at a decent clip?
I think it is starting, like you said, to soften, but there's still a very tight market. The rents are still increasing, probably not as like you said, on the same trajectory as it was previously, but it's still increasing. It's still, the demand is there. The people are there. We're not having properties sit there for weeks on end. We're getting good quality tenants. So, it's still a very good market.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good to know. Are you finding it still to be affordable for renters? I mean, we all know the rental crisis across Australia. I think nationally, renters are paying more than 30% now of their income in rent. Somehow they're still, it's still working. The system is still working. Are you finding rental arrears to be increasing in Cairns or in different suburbs, or is it still very much affordable?
So I think Because of the big demand, I think now more than ever, tenants are aware that they shouldn't be in arrears, because there's not a lot of stock, you know, there's so many applications coming through on properties that landlords can pretty much pick and choose. So if you're finding a tenant that's been in arrears, that's a red flag already. So, because there's so many applicants, you're probably going to play it safe and go with someone that's got a clean record. So in that perspective, I think it's a good thing for investors because, there's a low arrears rate, but, Mika might add on to that.
No, definitely. And it's all about your arrears management as well. So you've got to have your quality team to be able to assist and and assist the tenants if they do find themselves in difficulty as well. You want to help manage their situation and get them in the spot that they need to be. So education to the tenants is our key thing, and giving them, I suppose, the tools to have a good record and to continue that. So we're very big on the education side of it. So we don't see a lot of arrears. I'm not sure about other agencies, but we definitely have a very low arrears rate in our office.
Right, right. And just like all over Australia, if someone's in Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane or any place, you can buy property interstate by using good property managers. They do the inspections most of the time. I'm not sure how it is with you guys, for free, and the idea is that once the investor, this borderless interstate investor, is satisfied with the property, then you get a building and pest inspector through as well for that extra layer of due diligence. You negotiate, etc., sign the all that sort of thing, and you give that property to the rental manager or the property manager who first inspected the property. And in that way, you can transact with peace of mind, with all full due diligence down, local boots on the ground knowledge and know-how and experience, basically without a buyer's agent. It is that a process that you guys do as well? And maybe you can just walk through, let's say my name is PK, which it is, and I live in Sydney, which I don't, but let's just go with that. And I don't know, I'm interested, not to pump my own suburb, don't buy there blindly anyone, but let's say Mount Sheridan, and I found this property, whether it's off real estate or domain, or maybe I've made a few phone calls to local real estate agents, and one of them has offered me an off-market deal, and I'm like, all right, I need to contact Mika or JD. I've never been to Cairns. I don't know the first thing about the street or the property. I need it to be inspected. How do you work with someone like that?
Yeah. So, like, I found that establishing a relationship with the investor even before they buy the property is quite crucial. Just give them peace of mind, and I think as an investor, you need to do your due diligence as well and know what kind of fees are, what the fee structures are in Cairns. I've assumed it's a bit different in the bigger suburbs where having an indication of what you're going to pay for management, you need to consider that into your actual investment. You know, um, but I do for a lot of interstate clients. I help them with appraisals. A lot of the times, I do 3 or 4 appraisals for them before they actually end up buying a property. So we already established, a pretty good relationship. Because that's what I do for a living. I inspect properties. I know the rental market, so I can give them a good indication on what rental return and the demand that they will receive on that property. Um, so yeah, I'm not a building and pest inspector myself, but I'm happy to do inspections for clients with the hope of securing the management. So I do offer that service, and that's included purely just to win over their trust and to get the business for us. So a lot of the times, whether if you're interested in your buying stuff, you're purely going based the photos. You don't know the areas. You don't necessarily know the condition because a lot of the properties is virtually staged as well. So something simple. If it's a vacant property, might go there and do the inspection, and there's no curtains or blinds in the house. That's something that an investor needs to be aware of, that they have to have that as a minimum housing requirement. So they need to be aware that there's certain costs that they're gonna need to put into the property after settlement to get it to a standard where we can actually rent it.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think, yeah, when I first discovered this method, um, of not using you guys, but, like, working with you guys to get the properties inspected back in 2011, I was like, "This is a no-brainer," and then that way I can invest anywhere across Australia knowing that someone's inspected my house and, they know what they're doing. Like, Mika, you've been there for 2 decades, so that's not nothing, that's a lot of experience, and that's a lot of on the ground knowledge. I don't wanna, uh, um, hold a gun to your head or anything like that, but if I know everyone will want me to ask you this question, like, if someone has 600K to spend, or let's even stretch it to 700K, you know where this question's going, right? I know that you're property managers, you're not in the business of identifying suburbs that will boom, and so, let's take all of the following 3 minutes with that disclaimer. But knowing what you do, where do you see, across Cairns, even up to 800K maybe, where do you see across Cairns, where rents are going to rise the most over the next 1 or 2 or 3 years? And perhaps, an educated guess where property prices are likely to perform the best?
Mhm.
Well, I personally would invest in Gordonvale, just because, and I probably end up going for a bit of an older property, because of all the new builds and all the things happening there. I think that's going to push up prices, but also I'll be looking at something that's high in demand, and I think that 3 bedroom, 1 bathroom, try and keep it like under, let's say, between 520 and 560 rent. I think there's a massive amount of clients that fits into that category. If you're going to go for something bigger, like a 4 bedroom, 2 bathroom, I wouldn't expect the rent over 700 unless it's a really nice property. I think at the end of the day, making sure you buy something that where the demand is, with a lot of clients, because buying something over 800, is probably a bit more risky opposed to buying two cheaper properties and spreading your risk. I think personally that would be what I would do. Yeah.
Yeah, so you wouldn't probably need that amount. You could get something suitable for a lot less, or like JD said, you can buy two or combine that rather than just getting a large extravagant house. But yeah, you definitely want that median property, and I would definitely be looking down south, the southern corridor, so from Bentley Park, Edmonton, Gordon Vale, even Goldsboro. It's definitely growing down there as well. And that's the sort of the rural lifestyle that people are looking for. You don't have neighbors right next to you listening to your TV with you. So it is good for that aspect as well. So you're still in the city, but essentially you're living in a rural area close to the city. So you're getting the best of both worlds, really. And yeah, that Gordon Vale region is definitely the place where I would be looking.
Okay, that's interesting.
Sorry, sorry.
Go ahead, just
I think it might be a bit of a wild card, but you could probably try and also accommodate, because of the new health center that they're going to be building in Gordonville as well with the aged care facility. I think if you go for like a nice new build or like a bit more expensive property that kind of caters for your contract doctors, that could potentially work as well, because they're not going to necessarily understand the city drive out there all the time. So I do think there's a little small niche market that you might tap into as well.
okay. It's very interesting. It's good to get the local, the local tip. But of course, everyone, do your due diligence and see if it's right for you. Um, Maybe before we finish up, can I ask you, like, what's exciting for Cairns on the horizon? Like, economically or socially, or just in terms of the vibe, the people. What are people excited about in Cairns? What are they looking forward to? What's Cairns got to offer to to really lift spirits, community spirits, but also drive the region forward in the next 5 or so years.
I think it's definitely lifestyle. We all move here for that lifestyle. So we wouldn't want Cairns to change too much. And I think, we're excited that we do get to live a holiday lifestyle every day, but we're not on holidays, like it feels, you sit down on your back deck of a morning and you have your morning coffee and it feels like you don't have to rush off to work. You don't have to leave because you don't have an hour's worth of drive ahead of you. You can enjoy the day and the days seem longer. So I really think it all comes down to lifestyle. That's my opinion anyway.
Right. What about you, JD?
Yeah, I think like I obviously enjoy Cairns. To me, the biggest positive to Cairns is it's just you know as I like staying here, having all the tourists come here. Like I enjoy sitting out on my balcony as well, and I'm happy to be have a nice esplanade view. So seeing all the people jog there, having nice walks. They're all in holiday mode. You know that kind of is a good thing for me. And just on a side note, we do have a nice attraction coming. Should be between June and July. So they're doing a Egyptian exhibition center, which would be just next to the aquarium, which is also something really exciting for Cairns because there's not constantly new tourist attractions coming up. So I think personally that's a pretty big thing, which I'm excited about.
Oh, nice. I didn't know about that. It's the last thing I would have expected, something to do with Egypt in Cairns, but why not? Yeah, I think people don't realize that, I think Cairns, what is it, like 150, 160,000 people, like broadly speaking, live there, and it's Queensland's fifth biggest city. So it's not a small little town anymore, and I think it's just gonna go from strength to strength, especially with Australia's aging population, aging demographic. More and more people want that lifestyle that you're talking about. Of course, you both are very young, but the sooner you can get it, the better. And yeah, so long as population continues to grow in Australia, I think Cairns will always be a really attractive location. I think long term, it's got a lot of catching up to do, like you mentioned a couple of times, Mika. So I think that's a real tailwind for Cairns. Guys, is there anything that I haven't asked you about Cairns or you wanted to say before we finish up?
Well, Cairns is a great place to invest in, I think, and we will just continue growing. Yeah. And do your own due diligence.
Right, right. Nice one. Mika, yourself, any last words?
No, I just think that, when you are, from an investment point of view, when you are considering your property managers and things like that, you really do need to, again, do your due diligence when it comes to the experience that people have. It's not all about the fees. I work in the trenches, so I'm the property manager, the rentals general manager. So I know JD has a different aspect on that, but you need to have a good relationship with your property managers to make your investment work no matter where you are.
Mhm.
And you need to be able to trust and rely on your property management team. So, yeah, that's what I would sort of end with. Just, yeah.
No, good one. That's a really good point. And I should point out for everyone who's watching or listening, I don't actually have a relationship, like a property relationship with CPO. So all of this, there's no conflict of interest. I think what they offer in management fees is actually a little bit less than what I'm paying. So maybe I'll switch over, maybe not. But yeah, I just wanted to say that there's no kind of like backdoor innuendo with this. Just truly trying to provide value for everyone. I have to say, whole bunch of clients have bought in Cairns over the last, I think, 2 or 3 years, especially in that southern corridor. Now it's starting to become, I think we were buying sub 500, sub 600 now. Those same locations are, a little bit over 600, maybe even more than 700. So we're buying less than what we were buying, but we're still buying there. I still am very bullish for the next number of years on Cairns, and of course long term as well. But I want to thank you both for making time very early in the morning. I appreciate you taking the time. And if anyone wants to reach out to JD or Mika, you can. What's the website?
So just cpo.com. Easiest would just be just Google Cairns Property Office and you will find us.
Perfect. And of course, I'll share this in my Facebook group as well. And I think you're in that, right, JD? So I'll tag you there, and then people can get in touch. But if you have anyone's watching, listening, if you have any further questions, please comment in the YouTube comments or in the Facebook group comments, and I'll try my best to answer every single question. And maybe Mika or JD can also chip in it and try to add some value. But thank you so much, guys.
Sorry, Pika. Well, Pika, while we on adding value, I just want to mention that any investors watching this having property in Cairns, if they did consider us and wanted to move over, we will offer 10% discount on our rates, just for them mentioning that they've seen this video and it came via your group.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that was coming, but yeah, it's always good. We wouldn't want that. But thank you, JD. Thank you again, Mika.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pika.
And thank you everyone for watching, listening. If you got value, hit the subscribe button, give it a like, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.